Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Troy, and today we're learning about cultural etiquette. All right, what is cultural etiquette? Cultural etiquette is what you call the codes of behavior that rule different cultures. And in other words, what is acceptable and what isn't in society. I'm from the United States, so there are certain things that I would do in the United States or I would not do. Where you are from, there are certain rules and behaviors that you must follow, okay? So we're going to talk about cross-cultural communication and courtesy in public places. So listen closely, and I hope that you'll learn something today. Okay, first, cross-cultural communication. This includes greetings, direct versus indirect speaking, and asking a personal question. Okay, all three of these things are pretty common cross-cultural communication techniques, and every country has their own way of doing things. So first, let's talk about greetings. What are some common greetings that you know? Do you know the greeting in the United States? How would I greet someone? Okay, let's find out. So first, every country has their own greeting. Okay, there are certain ways you introduce yourself to someone or say hello, meeting them the first time. And it can be very awkward or weird when we meet someone from a different place. They may have a different way of introducing themselves. So let's look at some different ways people greet each other in different cultures.
Nice.
Hello.
But there's
A very common one is bowing. Bowing. Now, where do they bow? Well, they don't bow in my country. That would seem very weird. So this is usually in East Asia, Korea, Japan, China, Vietnam, a few others probably. And this is also a sign of respect. A greeting, but also a sign of respect or symbol of respect. Okay? What about the handshake? Yeah, the hand.
Hey.
Oh man, it's great to see you again.
You too. How are you doing?
Yeah, the handshake. Now this is the one that I use where I'm from, and typically in many Western countries too. So, this is a greeting for the first time when I meet someone initially, or I'm making an agreement on something. So maybe I'm buying something from a store, and the man says that will cost $20. I think about it. Okay, sounds good. Give them a firm handshake, and I buy that item. Okay. What's another one you can think of? Hugging. All right. Hugging is an interesting one.
Oh, hey man, how's it
Hey
going?
Tim, good to see you, man.
Oh,
Hugging is used between friends that I know well or my family. My family I already know well, so it's okay if I give them a hug. I only use this between my friends if I have been friends with them for a long time. Can also be used in a relationship with someone, boyfriend, girlfriend, if you're married, that's okay too, and probably more common. But it is not for someone that you just meet. I would not give a hug to someone if I'm meeting them for the first time. So don't do that. But it is okay if it's your family or a friend you've known. Okay, let's talk about direct versus indirect speaking. So this is sending or receiving information, but how I send or receive it. So how to get information without being too forward. Too forward means sort of like being rude. I don't want to think that the person is being rude if they're asking me this question. Now, depending on how I get my information, some people might think it's being rude, or how I ask them. So let's take a look at a scenario. Here we have Steve. Say hello to Steve. And here we have Jan. Say hello to Jan. Okay, Steve has a problem. I need to tell my boss something. Probably pretty important, right? Okay, Steve, what are you gonna do? All right, Steve says to Jan, I have not finished my report. Okay. Now this is a common situation. Maybe I forgot to do an assignment, or I'm really busy at work. All right, what do you think Jan's gonna say? That's okay, finish it tomorrow. Well, Jan's pretty nice. Okay, so you can see that Steve went directly to Jan and told her the problem that he was having. And Jan was pretty nice about it, and she says, that's okay, finish it tomorrow, maybe finish it in a couple days, whatever. But this is the example of direct speaking or direct communication. I have something I need to tell someone, and I will go directly to that person and tell them. This is a very common way of getting communication across to one another in Western countries. Now, what is the opposite? Indirect speaking? Yeah. All right, so we have Steve again, and we have Jan again, but we're going to introduce Joe. All right. Steve also has the same message, but he's going to tell Joe. I need to tell my boss something. So he's going to tell Joe, hey, can you tell Jan that I didn't finish my report? I will turn it in tomorrow. Okay, he didn't finish the report just like the last time, but he's telling Joe to tell Jan. Joe says, sure, no problem. And what does Joe tell Jan? Joe says Steve isn't going to finish his report before the deadline. Oh my gosh. What does Jan say? What do you think? Is she gonna be angry? Really? I thought he worked really hard. He's fired. Okay, now this is a pretty extreme situation. Most of the time, Steve probably wouldn't get fired, but for example, he did this time. And this is sort of a way of speaking that maybe the message that was initially said by Steve is not what he wanted Joe to tell Jan. Maybe Joe got confused and said something different. And this happens a lot. Is it common that this would happen, that Steve would get fired? Probably not. But the miscommunication may have caused a tiny problem, okay? But in some cases, maybe Jan might say, oh, that's okay. He can turn it in tomorrow, just like direct speaking. But this is a very extreme situation. So don't think that just because of you using indirect communication that this would happen. Okay. So as I said, this is indirect speaking. It's more or less the example of I'm telling someone to tell someone else. Okay. Indirect communication. All right, next we're going to be asking a personal question. So depending on who you are speaking to, only certain questions can be asked. All right, there are certain things that I'd ask or don't ask someone. So, the first question, what kind of work do you do? What kind of job do you have? That's a pretty common question, I think. All right, here's another question. How much do you make at your job? How much money do you make? Okay, these are two personal questions. One is a little bit rude. Which one is rude? Yeah, if you guessed how much do you make at your job, this is not a question I would ask someone. It's very personal. Okay, but it is okay to ask them what kind of job they do. All right, next. You may ask, what is your hobby? Do you have any pets? What is your favorite food? Can I help you with that? And these questions are okay. These are personal questions, but they are not too personal. Another question, if you want to get information from someone. Would you like to join us for dinner with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife? Are you married? Okay. Which one is probably the best one to ask?
Wow, so that was a really great movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It had a little bit of everything.
Action, romance. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, my friends and I are going to dinner after this. Do you want to come? You could bring your wife.
I don't have a wife, but I'm really hungry. Can I come along?
Yeah, sure. Great.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a really great movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a little bit of action, a little bit of romance, a little bit of comedy. It's good.
Well done, Jenny.
Yeah. So, are you married?
Sorry, I have to go right now.
Ask. Yeah, probably the first one. Would you like to join us for dinner with your blah, blah, blah? We would not ask someone, are you married? It seems very forward, kind of rude to ask, but it also goes in line with finding out information indirectly. Would you like to join us for dinner with your husband or wife? If they answer, sure, then I know that they have a husband or wife and that they are married. So the second question I do not need to ask. All right, let's take a look at courtesy in public places. All right, first, common gestures, proximity, food manners. Okay. Common gestures, we have acts of kindness that are offering help or being polite to someone. And these are not always necessary, but are encouraged in your culture. So, holding the door, letting someone go ahead of you, and maybe saying sorry. So the first one is holding the door. If someone is behind or is close to you after you enter a building, it is common and very polite to keep the door open for them as well, so they can enter behind you. You may also let that person go first, so you might hold the door open first and they go in before you. That is also pretty common. Letting someone go ahead of you. This is very typical in grocery stores. Maybe someone has one item and you have a lot of items. Maybe you'll let them go ahead of you because it will be quicker and they only have one thing to buy. You can let people cut in front of you if they see you are in a hurry. So an example, I was at the airport, I was running late for my flight, and I was trying to run through all of the people. I kept asking them, can I please go ahead of you? I need to go to immigration. My flight is almost going to leave. So they said, okay, go ahead. And they didn't have a problem with it. They knew I was in a hurry and they felt bad maybe. So it's okay to let someone in front of you as well. And saying sorry. We say sorry a lot. And Westerners, we say it a lot, even though if nothing has really happened or nothing wrong has taken place. We just say it. It's sort of something we automatically do. But we use it as a politeness strategy. So if something does happen and we're not sure if that person is upset, we'll just say it anyways as sort of a strategy that they aren't going to be mad, okay? It's not necessarily apologizing for something, but we just want to make sure that it is okay, that I did do nothing wrong, okay? All right, next we have proximity. Proximity is the distance of space between you and someone, okay? And this space often changes. So certain cultures have smaller or larger spaces. So let's take a look at some images. Here you'll see a public space, social space, personal space, and intimate space. So intimate space is probably your family, or maybe if you're in a relationship with someone very close. Personal space is maybe if you're waiting in line, or maybe you're at meeting someone new. Social space, this can be in a restaurant, the grocery store, at a park, okay? Not too close with someone. And public space, this can be anywhere really, outside. And social space and public space can be sort of mixed into each other. Public space, maybe more in lines with the grocery store, okay? So let's take a look at this one. Pretty close, right? This is not common in Western countries. This looks to be India. And this is very close. This would make me feel pretty weird.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello,
Yeah.
great. Did you find everything
I
okay?
did.
Good.
Quite hungry.
Yeah, I can see that. Oh,
Yeah.
boy. All right, that will be $20.
Here you go.
Thank
You know
you.
what? Just forget about it.
But what? Oh. Sure, no problem.
This is probably a more common distancing or proximity that I would be comfortable with. Okay, and maybe where you're from, your country, it might change.
Hey, how's it
Hello,
going?
great. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. A little
Good.
hungry.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. Okay. All right, all together that will be $20.
Here you go.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Hello.
All right, next we have eating manners, and these are actions displayed while eating. So some manners may be considered polite in one country, but rude in another. So first, we're going to talk about tipping. Next is noisy eating. And the last one, sharing, and specifically sharing food. So first we have tipping. Do you tip in your country? Maybe? Okay. So tipping is generally encouraged in countries that use it. So where I'm from, the United States, tipping is encouraged, but it is not mandatory. We don't have to do it if we don't want to, but if we don't, it seems very rude of us to not tip the waiter, and is usually between 10 and 15% of the total bill. Okay. Noisy eating, noisy eating. Ooh, this is a very, very rude thing in Western countries.
Yes.
It's not common. Yeah, sure, some people are noisy, but we try to be quiet when we're eating. So no slurping or chewing with your mouth open, and no talking with food in your mouth. It is very rude. Some countries, this is okay, and that's fine. But in Western countries, it's probably not common.
Yes. What?
And last, sharing. So eating from the same plate or bowl is not common. And when we share food, it's sort of considered unhygienic, a little dirty. And food is more individualistic. So I order something at a restaurant, my friend orders something at a restaurant, and we eat that certain item that we order. We do not share. If it is someone I know very well, I might ask them, can I try that? But they will not let me take the food from their plate or bowl. They will give it to me first. Okay? But even then, it's still uncommon. Okay.